Hello everyone, here is Sophie from the IFPMA, Senior Manager Ethics and Compliance, and I wish you all a warm welcome to our third code revision webinar. As we are a very large group, and as you can see in the chat message, we need to allow for a clear line, and also because we are recording this webinar for future use, we will have to mute you all, unfortunately, except the trainers, of course. You will still have the right to speak. We have received your questions by email, which we will discuss in our Q&A session at the end of the webinar. The Ethics and Business Integrity Committee, many of which are here with us today, as well as our Director General, Thomas Quaney, are very proud to introduce our new Code of Practice that will become effective in less than 2 months, on January 1st. It is great to see how many of you show interest to get to learn more about our new ethical standards that are really raising the bar for our industry. We should never forget that it requires a lot of effort to reach consensus on a global level. So I would like to take this opportunity today to thank you all for your involvement in the discussions, your socialization within your companies, and your willingness to compromise. This all would not have been possible without the involvement of our committee chair, Melissa Barnes, who has recorded a video message for you.
I'm Melissa Barnes, and I'm the chair of the IFPMA Ethics and Business Integrity Committee. I'm also Senior Vice President of Enterprise Risk Management and Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer of Eli Lilly and Company. I appreciate you taking the time to learn about the revisions to the Code of Practice and also for acting as a champion for business integrity in all that you do. I also want to thank everyone who has worked so diligently over the past 2 years to get us to this point. Before we review what's new, I want to take a moment to look back at the history of the development of the IFPMA Code of Practice and talk a little bit about how the business ethics profession has changed and evolved. The first IFPMA code was established nearly 40 years ago in 1981, and it set a precedent for global self-regulation of industry practices. A lot has changed in the world since then, and the pharmaceutical industry and the field of business ethics continues to change and evolve. But one thing that has remained constant is that our customer trust is crucial to achieving our missions. Patients, healthcare providers, regulators, and policymakers must be able to trust that we do our work, that we make and market our medicines with the highest integrity. The IFPMA Code of Practice was last revised in 2012 to reflect the established principles at that time. 2012 was also the year that the heads of state of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or as we know it, APEC, endorsed the Mexico City Principles for Voluntary Codes of Business Ethics in the biopharmaceutical sector. That established a comprehensive ethical and integrity framework for our industry. The 2012 code took a rules-based approach, which we now understand may have some shortcomings. While it may work to improve overall compliance with policies and procedures, it doesn't necessarily help instill the type of culture needed for our organizations to have effective ethics and compliance programs. Our programs rely on strong policies and procedures and a culture grounded in integrity, values, and principles. With this type of culture, employees use judgment to make good decisions and ask for help when they need it. The work we've done on the 2018 code was marked by several global agreements on important topics. I want to call attention to one in particular, the IFPMA ethos. We developed the ethos to replace our guiding principles and to facilitate the shift from a rules-based approach to a code based on values, and above all, customer trust. So we put trust in the center of our ethos to emphasize the integral role it has in our 4 additional core values of care, fairness, respect, and honesty. Our ethos, therefore, ensures that we have a solid foundation on which to build overall awareness of ethics and business integrity. As we work to align our individual organizations' code with the 2018 Code of Practice, we must all continue to work together. While the development of the 2018 Code is important, this alignment is what gives the code its value. We all share a common interest in operating our organization with the highest level of ethical standards, so that we can positively affect the lives of patients who take our medicines and the others that we serve. Please take the ethos and the 2018 Code to heart in all you do every day. Thank you again for your time today to learn more about these updates, and thank you for helping our industry and our organizations keep integrity at the heart of all we do as we work to improve the health of people we serve around the globe.
So let's have a look at the agenda for today. There you go. The introduction we just listened to. Then we will continue to explain how did we get here. So what was the process that led to the changed code that we have? We will look at the main changes to the code in overview, the ethos, the ban on gifts, the promotional aids, the complaints procedure, and also the notes for guidance. Then we will look at the next steps that we're going to take from here. And at the end, we have reserved 20 minutes for questions and answers. As I already told you, those have been received by us from you by email. Thanks in advance again for that. So how did we get here? The Code of Practice is a living document that evolves over the years. The initial IFPMA code, as Melissa mentioned, was established in 1981. It was the first of its kind, setting a precedent for global self-regulation of industry practices. The last code, so the current code, was issued in 2012. But now, since then, a lot has changed, and the research and development-based biopharmaceutical industry continues to change and evolve. Society's expectations of our industry constantly rise the bar. We need to meet these and live up to our commitments. Revisions of our code take place every 6 or so years. This time around, we started in Q4 2016. It was almost 2 years of hard work and constant exchange with the committee members who brought the inputs of their companies and associations. We had a long company internal socialization phase to discuss and create alignment, and we made sure that every single comment was taken into account. When presented to Council in May this year, there was unanimous support. During the ballot vote by the General Assembly on the 8th of June, 92.5% voted yes. We have been working and are working still a little bit with those very few members who are not in agreement, as they too have to implement the changes. It is indeed so that the national implementation in some countries or regions of the world is challenging, because the majority of companies within the local association is outside of IFPMA membership. Our position, however, remains that the code will become effective as of the 1st of January 2019. For this reason, we allowed for a 6-month period, so June until December, for internal education and preparation. We are doing the due diligence now to ensure that all members intend to comply. Next slide. So the effective date of 1st of January is at the same time also the implementation date. By that date, all members have to be aligned. As we heard from Melissa, we need to work together because it is the global alignment that gives the IFPMA code its value. Let's look at what is new now. So we have already heard about this new element that has been introduced in the code, which is the so-called ethos. As Melissa already stated, our ethos is the ethical foundation of the IFPMA, to which all our members hold themselves accountable. It is the common spirit of the way we want to do business, the baseline to ensure our day-to-day interactions with healthcare professionals and the broader health community are appropriate and in line with ever-changing societal expectations. In the center of the ethos, you see trust. And trust is then surrounded by values that describe how we strive to achieve this trust: care, fairness, respect, and honesty. With the ethos, we show that we apply these values to our decisions and actions, and that we understand that how we do our work is just as important as what we do. The outermost circle of the ethos defines this how, with a commitment to innovation, quality, integrity, accountability, education, privacy, transparency, and speaking up. With the ethos, we go above and beyond the rules in the code. It is simply not possible to codify everything we need to know to operate our businesses. Therefore, the ethos underpins the rules and provides a framework when we can't find the answer in the code. Our ethos instills the type of culture we need to have effective ethics and compliance programs that build patient trust. So I will go through the different values, but I will not go through all of them because it would take too long. So this one is care. I will not go in detail, but I would go in detail through the next one, fairness. So what does fairness mean for our membership? Support and respect fair trade practices and open competition. Then you have the principle of integrity. Act responsibly, ethically and professionally. Do not offer, promise, provide or accept anything of value in order to inappropriately influence a decision or gain an unfair advantage. So this is basically the FCPA in short. And then the second principle is accountability. Be accountable for our actions and decisions, including the appropriate oversight of external third parties that act on our behalf. And this is what we found important, to integrate the third parties here as well. The next value is respect, with privacy and education. You can read through it. And the last one is honesty, speaking up, and transparency. So I really hope you take the time yourself to look at these values and principles, and we will also help you as of the 5th of December, when we have the soft launch of our code. We will publish on our homepage the tools to learn more about the ethos. Now, we continue to the next change in the code, and this is actually a really important one, and therefore you're also going to have a different voice, because otherwise you may fall asleep. Sorry, the previous slide still. I am handing over to Robert Skinner, who is Ethics and Compliance Head for Global Franchises at GSK. Robert is a highly valued member of the IFPMA working group on gifts and other items, which was probably the working group with the highest challenges during the last 2 years. And I think the people of the working group that are on the phone can confirm this. Robert, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sophie. Can I just check that you can hear me okay?
Very well, Robert. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Right. So I'm going to talk, as Sophie said, about the changes that have taken place to what you know as Section 7.5 of our code. And the first thing you can see there is we've added a new opening sentence, which is really a sort of general spirit that we believe every aspect beneath in this section needs to adhere to. And you can see it says items in this section, where permissible, must never constitute an inducement to prescribe, recommend, purchase, supply, sell, or administer a pharmaceutical product. So you can see this links very well to what Sophie was just talking about in our ethos, the core value of fairness, and specifically, I think, the principle of integrity. So we must never constitute an inducement with what we do. So hopefully that brings some additional clarity to the code in section 7.5. And then to go into some more specifics, the next bullet point you can see there relates to a ban on gifts. Well, hopefully you know that actually from the 2012 code, there was already a ban on gifts, but there was an allowance through the Q&A for certain exceptions, i.e. Some cultural courtesy items or customary gifts, they're sometimes called. So you can see some examples there of mooncakes that were perhaps given in China, condolence payments in Japan. These are now all prohibited as well. So the ban on gifts extends to cultural courtesy items as well now. The main reason for this is that these clearly have no scientific value. We have significant concerns around the impact they might have on the reputation of our industry. And what we really want to do going forward is drive a professional relationship between our company representatives and our HCPs that we work with. And we don't believe that these gifts provide any sort of foundation for a professional relationship. Indeed, we believe they trivialize that relationship. So consequently, they are now prohibited in our new 2019 code. Moving on to the next slide, please. You can see just some added clarification there that these gifts, whether provided directly or through clinics and institutions. So it's just making a clarification that it's not just direct giving of gifts, but indirect is prohibited as well. And I would say that this change now aligns the IFPMA code very clearly to the FBA code for Europe and the PhRMA code in the US, where actually a ban has been enforced for several years on gifts and indeed promotional aids, which is what we will come to on the next slide. Okay, so this perhaps is the most significant change that you'll see in this new code with a ban on promotional aids for prescription-only medicines. So let me start with just 1 or 2 examples as a reminder. When we talk about promotional aids, we're talking about non-monetary reminder items. So there's some examples there of post-it notes, mouse pads, calendars, plasters, but the list is probably endless. In the 2012 code allowed these if it was relevant to the practice of medicine, relevant to the practice of that specific HCP. But there is now a complete ban on these promotional aids in relation to the promotion of prescription-only medicines. Now I'm making that distinction there because you'll see in a moment there's an exception, or exclusion for promotion of over-the-counter medicines, which the IFPMA code does cover as well. So it's important to be clear that this ban on promotional aids relates to the promotion of prescription-only medicines, but not over-the-counter medicines, where we believe the risk is lower because their patients can make their choice about which product they take. The other exception that you can see there on the right-hand side of this slide is that it says pens and notepads at company organized events may be allowed for the purpose of taking notes during the meeting. And please note that such pens and notepads may be company branded but not product branded. And again, they should be of minimal value and only the amounts necessary for the quantity of the meeting. So an example might be that a company might give these at a Congress symposium that they're organizing, where clearly the HCPs would be expected to take some notes around the presentations, but they certainly shouldn't be given out at scientific or commercial booths, because that would really constitute gift giving. And again, the reasons behind this, as I said, with gifts generally earlier on, they're not adding to a science. These promotional aids are more trivializing the relationship between the HCPs and the company. And they add very little educational value. So, and in fact, there was a vote from the EBIC membership back in 2017 when we're discussing changes to the next version of the code, and 87% of the membership were actually in favour of putting a ban on promotional aids. So I think an important message, if the message hasn't got through already, that you need to make sure this message is communicated to your marketing teams so they can manage stocks for 2019 and ensure they don't order promotional aids that they won't be able to use. Okay, if we move on to the next slide, items of medical utility. These were obviously mentioned in the previous version of the code. There were already some restrictions in place, and we've added some further restriction in this new code. So examples of items of medical utility, first of all, some examples mentioned there: inhalation devices, for example, without the active ingredient, or certain devices intended to assist patients to learn how to self-inject, or indeed some software or mobile apps may be classified as an item of medical utility. Such items of medical utility can include the company name, but must not be product branded. And there's one small exception here. This is a very rare instance, I think, but unless the product's name is essential for the correct use of that item. There are very, very few examples where the product, perhaps the product name needs to be on a specific device, because that specific device is unique and the only one that can be used with that particular medicine. But those situations are rare, I think. So generally only company branded. Okay, if we move to the next slide. So I said there were some clarifications around IMUs, and just to reiterate what is now in the new code. So IMUs can be offered, but only if they are of modest value, which there should be a definition of locally already. They are not expected to be supplied by the HCPs themselves or their employers. Essentially what this bullet point is saying is we should not be subsidizing sort of routine business operations, routine surgery operations. So we shouldn't be providing things that the HCPs would be expected to have in their clinics, in their surgeries already. So things like stethoscopes, surgical gloves, etc., would not be acceptable. IMUs need to be beneficial to enhancing the provision of medical services and patient care, and they must not be offered on more than an occasional basis, even if each individual item is appropriate. Okay, so that's IMUs. And then the last slide I'm going to present is this one, which actually relates to a new subsection under 7.5 called informational or educational items that enhance patient care. Such items may be provided to HCPs for their education or for the education of patients, provided that the items are primarily for educational purposes and do not have independent value. So some examples may be scientific books, journal subscriptions, some memory sticks with educational data are examples, but to think about this a little bit further, we've got some bullets here. So for example, memory sticks preloaded with educational informational data may be appropriate, but only if the storage capacity is commensurate with the materials provided. So we don't want memory sticks that have significant amount of memory and just a small presentation on there. That would not be appropriate. And something else that isn't appropriate is tablet computers. So these could not be provided to HCPs because clearly they have independent value and could be utilized for completely different purposes. So they would not be appropriate at all. Just going on to the final slide to continue this discussion on informational educational items. Again, as we saw with IMUs, they can include the company name but must not be product branded, again, unless that very rare exception where the product name may be essential for the correct use of the item by a patient. One more point here is the value we recognize in putting this section together, the value of certain perhaps medical textbooks or subscriptions may be more than what we would regard as modest for an IMU, for example. So we've introduced a new term of reasonable value here. So that books and subscriptions could be slightly greater value than modest, but still must be reasonable. Again, this reasonable term will need to be defined locally. But we recognize that scientific books and journal subscriptions might exceed the value of modest that's already been defined locally. And overall, it's important that the cost is, as well as the overall benefit to an individual HCP in a given year is considered. So again, back to our overarching statement about not constituting an inducement to prescribe. Okay, I'll pass on to Holger, I believe, Sophie, who's going to deal with the complaint procedure.
Thank you so much, Robert, for this great summary. And I can already imagine that a lot of people would love to ask a question now, but unfortunately we cannot allow for that just now. But we will treat some questions to promotional aids during the Q&A session, and then you will also get my email address for all questions that you still have that are not answered. You can send them to me also after the webinar, and you will get a reply. So the next code change will be presented to us by Holger Diener, who is the Managing Director of the Association of Voluntary Self-Regulation for the Pharmaceutical Industry in Germany, and also the very capable right hand of Melissa Barnes as Vice Chair of our Ethics and Business Integrity Committee. Over to you, Holger.
Thanks very much, Sophie, and hello, everybody. Well, we had some, it's not a revolution, it's an evolution of the complaint procedure that we did. The first thing we did is we aligned fully the scope of the procedure to the scope of the code. I think we discovered some white spots when it comes to the local implementation, and we just wanted to close these white spots. Then when we came to the procedure, I think one of the major changes that's now in the procedure is the second review by the appeal group in the validation process. You know that a complaint comes to the IFPMA Secretariat and it's been validated by the Secretariat. And if the Secretariat thinks that the complaint is not valid to go to the process, then the appeal group or a subgroup of the appeal group will have a second view on this decision and can decide and either approve it or decide there are some grounds to proceed in the procedure. Then we aligned the time limits, so we tightened somehow the limits that are in the current procedure, and we also aligned the limits. When we speak of days, in the old one you could find calendar days, working days, or just days. We now, in the new structure, you will always see calendar days, because we think this is valid for all areas in the world, and it's more workable than to speak of, for example, working days. So I think it's a minor change, but it provides more clarity when we handle and when we live to the procedure. Then the adjudication and appeal group are now elected for a period of 2 years instead of 1. This was the old model, so they had to be reapproved every year. Now we have a 2 years period, and I think it provides some more clarity and we don't have to go to the council every year just to get these groups to be approved. We added a section, and this is just more or less a clarification on anonymous complaints. They were accepted even beforehand. Now we said, well, we still accept them, but we really encourage the complainant to be visible, to do it openly and not to use the anonymous complaints. But there may be situations where we have, for example, an employee of a company that wants to file a complaint to the IFPMA, and he or she doesn't want to appear for good reasons. Then clearly we still accept anonymous complaints. And one of the last changes, besides some editorial changes to the procedure, is the oral hearing. That's now in the procedure in the appeal process. In the second step, there the company can have an oral hearing and can present the facts and the arguments personally to the members of the group. And I think this will also, make the procedure more sustainable and more workable also for the appeal group, because then you have a face-to-face communication, and I think this is more direct than just the exchange of letters or emails. This is if you can flip to the next slide, please. There you have the procedure. You see the time limits. You see the working days instead of calendar days. You see the new second review process, and you also see that's the in the lower left side of that chart. You see the dotted line that goes from the IFPMA appeal group to the appeal request within it goes with ruling, and you have the oral hearing, the oral ruling. No, I'm sorry. No, I'm mistaken. You have the full structure, and you see it's just an evolution. It's not a revolution, but I'm quite convinced that this will also bring more credibility to the whole complaint procedure. So just a small step, but I think it's a big step for the procedure. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Holger. Very well done. Just a small correction with the calendar days and working days. In fact, we have replaced the calendar days by working days. So thanks for the person who spotted that. Was just
I'm sorry.
In the heat of the fight. They are correct in the slides. It was just a mishap in the oral version. Thank you, Holger. Now we will go to. Now I have to see where we are. Oh yes, now we will go to me, in fact. I am going to just summarize a few minor changes that we did, that we don't have to talk about a long time. For example, we changed the IFPMA address because we have moved office. We changed also the name of the ethics committee, which is a bit more interesting maybe, because in the past the committee was called CCN, which stands for Code Compliance Committee. And we have, with the committee, agreed already almost 2 years ago that we would change it to EBIC, which stands for Ethics and Business Integrity Committee. And we feel that this is so much more us, and that we do not only want to focus on compliance, but really also on the entire ethics topic. Point number 3 is about clarification on events involving foreign travel. We have replaced the home country with the HCP's country of practice, which makes the provision much clearer, to our opinion. Then on the accompanying guests, we have clarified that companies only pay expenses for accompanying guests in case of medical necessity. So also a clarification. Then on 7.4, which is covered in point number 5 here on the slide, we have the fees for services compensation that says that an arrangement or a compensation arrangement may include reimbursement of reasonable expenses, including travel, meals, and accommodation. And we will hear more about fees for services in the next few minutes. And then, as I think Robert already mentioned, we have added this value indication of reasonable value for scientific books and journal subscriptions, because they are not always modest, but they still have to be reasonable. And the local associations will guide you on that. So next slide. As I already mentioned, we will talk about fees for services, but not only, because we also have events and meetings, which we will start with. We have developed a note for guidance, or we have updated the existing note for guidance on meetings and events. These notes are not binding in themselves, but they offer additional guidance towards relevant provisions in the code. And for the first one, so the one on events and meetings, I am handing over to Christian Roth, the co-president of the International Pharmaceutical Congress Advisory Association, short IPCA. Christian, the floor is yours.
So thank you very much for the introduction. I have the pleasure of actually representing the updates to the note for guidance on behalf of our working group, which did actually consist of association industry representatives. Now, as you already said, Sophie, this is a non-binding document, but a very good source of additional information and clarity in regards to the scope for implementation when it comes to making decisions about support of external activities, but as well when it comes to organization of internal activities of the different companies. So the initial version was 2014. This is now the updated version, where we've actually integrated all the learnings and points we have seen in 2014, which we would actually propose to change into the document to make it accurate and relevant to all of us. So the main changes are the location notion, so that the location should aim to minimize travel for the attendees and take security considerations into account. Second one, that exhibition areas of scientific congresses should only be accessible to the intended audience. And what we added at the end of the document, an additional external resource, our Congress Healthcare Guidelines, which provides specifically for medical congresses further details and further points for consideration in that document. That can all be found actually in the updated version, which you can see under the IFPMA website under resources and publications, and we have the link embedded on that slide at the end. So I think this was the update about the note for guidance for sponsorships of events and meetings.
The next note for guidance that we have developed is entirely new and will be introduced to us by Heather Simmons, Director of the Prescription Medicines Code of Practice Authority, or the PMCPA, in the UK. Over to you, Heather.
I haven't really got very much to say other than we were drawing up this guidance on fees for services using a similar approach to the one that Christian just referred to, where we had membership from associations and companies. And the aim is really to try to ensure that any fee for service activity takes place in an appropriate framework. Of course, the industry needs to work and needs to pay for advice from health professionals, but it's important that people feel confident that the arrangements are appropriate and reasonable, and it isn't a mechanism by which pharmaceutical companies make inappropriate payments to health professionals to, in effect, listen to promotion about their medicines. So the fees for services adopted a similar approach to the well-established sponsorship and meetings guidance, in that a few of the principles were set out, which obviously reflect what's in the IFPMA code. But also we extended them by providing a list of questions so that people analysing or deciding whether arrangements are appropriate have some guidance as to what sort of information they need to get in order to make a well-informed decision. The issues can be controversial. We've had some criticisms in the UK about pharmaceutical companies' advisory board meetings, and hopefully by following the questions and getting all the relevant information, people will be much more confident about these sorts of arrangements. But equally, you know, it's not a binding document. It's there to provide help and guidance. And of course, like everything that we do in relation to the IFPMA, we're very happy to have any feedback on it. I'll leave it there, Sophie, so that you can move on to the Q&A section.
Yes, Heather, thank you so much. It was very clear. So before we move to the Q&A session, there is only one last slide that we will go through really quickly, because it's a summary of the next steps. We are doing code revision webinars, just as the one today, but today is actually the last one of 2018. That's also why we are recording it, so that people can still access it on our website. We will also develop an e-learning tool with Q&As that will be posted on our IFPMA website. For the time being, we have already many Q&As that are included in the code itself, and we are finalizing right now a document with additional Q&As that is a summary of the questions that have reached us from members and from members mainly. So a very interesting document that will be posted on the 5th of December. Then we also do live training, so face-to-face capacity building workshops and consultation meetings in strategic regions. And in 2018, this region was Ghana, where we were in September with a big group of IFPMA members as trainers, and with over 100 representatives from members and also non-member companies that were participants to the training. And we also had representation from governmental bodies. It was a hugely interesting 2 days, and if anyone is interested, we have a slide deck that we are happy to share. Next year, we will be holding the face-to-face workshops in Mexico and Thailand. So then we also, of course, take the opportunity whenever we can to speak at conferences, and we have our so-called consensus framework roundtable meeting, which is going to take place in December, which is very helpful for communication on the code changes. We also have our framework partners as the World Medical Association and the International Association of Patient Organizations, who have already published articles in their respective newsletters. So you can see we really, communication is key, as you know, and we're really trying to use the channels that are important for our industry. Then there is a third note for guidance that we did not present to you today because it's not yet ready, but it will be ready in the next week, because it will then be presented to IFPMA Council, and it is on the important topic of medical education. The global effective date, as you already know by now, is January 1st, and after that we will of course also start our monitoring program. So that's it from my side, and now over to you with the Q&A session. Here is also my email address, and of course you always also have your company or association representatives in our committee who you can ask questions to, because these people, you have heard a few today on the line. They are very knowledgeable and very happy to help. So let's look at the kind of questions we received here from your side. The first one is an interesting one. It asks if the IFPMA code applies to the promotion and marketing of over-the-counter products that may also be prescribed by healthcare professionals. And as we have not heard so much of you yet, Holger, I would like to give this question to you if you agree to answer.
Yes, of course. Thanks very much, Sophie, and I'm very happy to answer. And a very brief and crisp answer would be yes. And as a reference, you can look to the Q&A 2.2 and 4.2 in the current and in the new one, in the old and also I think in the new one, and especially in the new one, where you can find the answer to that question. I think it doesn't matter if these products can be prescribed by the HCP. They are in scope. So all OTCs are in scope. And if the prescription is needed for regulatory purposes because of otherwise you cannot bring this product to the patient, I think then we talk about an RX product. But if it's an OTC, it's generally in scope. Yeah, and I can just guess what's a little bit confusing with the question, and this might be the prescription status. But I think the possibility to prescribe an OTC, maybe for reimbursement purposes. Yeah, I think there are some countries in the world where you need a prescription for an OTC to get it reimbursed by the sick funds. This doesn't matter in context with the code. So if it's an OTC, it's generally in scope. Yeah, this is the very short question to the number one question.
Perfect, Holger. Thanks a lot. And for everyone who has a hard time following the answer, these questions will also be part of this Q&A document, this additional Q&A document that we are preparing. So you can then, as of the 5th of December, check the answers online. The question 2 is about educational items, and it asks if a company has an educational tool for patients, whether given directly to patients or through the HCP, can they put their company name or product name on such material? Will this be considered a gimmick? And our expert on items of medical utility is Robert.
And as I mentioned before, the product name could only go on a sort of educational tool if it was in that very rare circumstance where it was essential for the correct use by the patient. So perhaps the tool was unique to a particular medicine and the patient had to use that device with that medicine, but that is going to be extremely rare circumstance. So it can only be company branded. The other point there clearly is that there's a potential for direct to patient advertising, which clearly we can't do anyway. So it really is going to be an exceptional circumstance. So only company branded.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Robert. Question number 3. According to the new IFPMA code, so Q&A 14, a company is allowed to provide pens and notepads at company organized events. If there is a document to be distributed, can the company provide plastic folders with company name or product name on the plastic folder for the purpose of holding the document? Will this folder be considered a promotional aid? And this is a very good question for Cecile. Cecile from Sanofi, who has joined us as well. Cecile, now you just have to repeat your exact title because I forgot to write it down, but I know it's very important. Can you please introduce yourself?
Do you want me to take this question, Sophie, if we can't get through to Cecile?
Yes, maybe we should do that to not lose too much time. Thank you, Robert.
Okay. Well, I think the short answer is no. We wouldn't really want this. I think it's the way it's phrased. It almost sounds like an excuse to try and give some gift of some sort. These plastic folders with company name and product name certainly wouldn't be allowed anyway for holding a document. So there shouldn't be. There should, the main purpose is at a company event where HCPs would be expected to write something down. We can provide pens and notepads in the appropriate quantity so they can take notes. But we don't want these distributed in nice plastic folders, takeaway, which could constitute a gift. Again, it's an area that could cause reputational damage, doesn't add scientific value, so we would discourage this.
Okay, really, really great answer, Robert. Thank you so much. We go to question number 4. Question number 4. In the cases where company branding is allowed, could it include a reference to the therapeutic area? For example, company name, oncology. And this is a question for Heather. Heather, please.
IFPMA code, it would be acceptable if the therapeutic area is not a product name, unless you're the only therapy, the only product in that therapeutic area. It might be more difficult. But in general, there's many products in various therapeutic areas. There may be national laws and regulations which will define this differently and consider that there is a connection with the product. And you would obviously have to check with local associations and local laws, which is perhaps an important reminder with anything in relation to codes of practice. It's about the national arrangements as well that you'll need to be familiar with. Thank you.
Great, Heather. Thanks to you. Question number 5 is about a third-party congress, and our members want to know if paper coffee mugs, napkins, or sugar sachets at the company booth would be considered a gift. Could those be company branded, as most likely they are not to be kept? And our Congress specialist, we have him on the line. Christian, what do you think?
Thank you, Sophie, and I quote, you can
It sounds like you have an echo or some kind of outside noise. Would you be very upset if I take over the answer? Because I think it's going to be difficult for people to hear you like this. So I hope that I say it correctly. Otherwise, you have to write me a very angry chat. But I think that single-use or disposable tableware would not be considered a gift. Because it's not to be kept, and it can be company branded for use at the third-party event company booth. Obviously, product branding would not be allowed, so only company branding. And then also as an indicator is that please follow the national guidelines as to which refreshments may be served in the cups. Sometimes or often it's only coffee or water, but you know that better than me for your own respective countries. Then our last question is a very fancy one. The question is, can a memory stick preloaded with educational data be of a fancy design that resembles the product, for example, an inhaler or a bottle? And one more time, I would like to ask Robert here.
Yes, thank you, Sophie. I think that it's a very fancy question as well, and it's obviously a commercial mind that's already started to analyse the new code. I mean, a couple of things I would say is please bear in mind when you're faced with these practical solutions, because we cannot put every eventuality in the code. Please bear in mind what we've said about the spirit of the code, not constituting an inducement. I think in this particular example, the educational data on a memory stick is fine in itself, but a fancy design that resembles the product is then starting to take it across into the red zone, really, an area that we don't want to be. It would quite rightly, I suspect, be then classified more as a gift. It's something that's got some additional intrinsic value that outside of the educational data. So let's try and keep these relationships professional and just provide the data in a normal memory stick. So I would caution against this. I don't think it's appropriate, especially as it's pointing towards a particular product potentially.
Indeed, Robert, 100% agreed on that one. So that's it for the questions. I see that some of you are trying to send us text messages or chats with further questions. That's great. But can I ask you to use the email address s.mellers@ifpma.org for the questions, because right now we will have to close the webinar. And I would like all of you to thank you for your time and your interest to learn about this revised code. It's really essential that you are involved, and we really hope that you have learned something from this hour today. If you have any feedback, of course, you can also share it by email. And other than that, please watch out for the additional toolkit materials that are going to be posted as of the 5th of December. And with that, I wish you all a wonderful day and hope to talk to you soon. Bye-bye.